All right. Well, nice to meet you all, and through this strange and new reality we're in. As I said, my name is Nicholas Robbins, landscape architect with Fathom Studio. I'm co-project managing this Streetscape project with Devin Siegel. Some of you may know Devin from the work he did on the last phase of the Streetscape, and he's the director of landscape architecture at our firm. In the time between the work we did before and the work we're doing now, our company has rebranded. So we were once Acoustics Planning and Design, and we are now Fathom Studio. And Fathom Studio is just a sort of cohesive brand for all of the different sort of offices of design that we have in one company, from engineering to architecture, planning and design. So without further ado, I'm going to run you through our concept design for the next phase of streetscape improvement. We're working on Main Street, continuing the work that was done and completed in 2017. So some of you may have the opportunity to have seen our public engagement that we did on the Get Involved Yarmouth website. We really just wanted to land people on Main Street and remind them what's so great about it. So when we think about Main Street and the street improvements we're going to do, we look at our sort of main objectives. So objective one is to improve the amenity of the street, so the things the street has to offer, and the accessibility, so how easy it is to use it. Work within the town's identity, which is colorful, lively, inviting, and historic, and beautify the street further by the work we're doing. So to date, the streetscaping improvements that have been done started phase one was considered Hawthorne Street, when it converted the street from a service street to a full street with sidewalk lighting, planting beds, and interlocking pavers. As the work has really complemented the farmers market and created more outdoor space for vendors. Phase two is the work that our studio completed in 2017. This was a series of 9 sidewalk extensions along Main Street and the adjacent corners, creating more public space in the street realm, allowing people to sit and rest, giving people planting areas and street trees, bicycle parking, and some stone features. So this is the phase of work we're in now, which is phase 2 extension. So we're carrying the work down Main Street, past the AGNS and Alma Square, and our last bump out area will be Lovett and Collins Street. So as I mentioned before, we were hoping to, before COVID hit, come down to Yarmouth and run a large public meeting and get to meet a lot of you folks, as well as a lot of the residents. Lots of handshakes and greeting was in the cards, but obviously that phase of life is over for right now. So we managed to move everything online, and we got some really great feedback. We had a lot of people at least looking at the site, watching the introduction video, engaging with the survey, and generally we just wanted to get people's feeling about the work that had been done to date. And so we had sort of a baseline for what we were going to focus on in the next phase of work. So at a glance, we got some really great feedback. The describe Yarmouth in 3 words was my personal favorite. I thought we got some great responses to it, and they're just shown here by order of magnitude. So the scale of the text responds to how many times people said these words. And the 3 big takeaways were public art, more waste receptacles, and improved accessibility, meaning making sure the street was easy to use for people of all ages and abilities, were the big takeaways from that engagement. So this slide just gives you an example of the work we do and have done around the province. We were responsible for the work on Main Street in Yarmouth, also a major streetscaping project in Bridgewater, right by the Riverside Park, which some of you may know. We've recently been engaged with the Digby Town Council, and we've done a streetscape project for them. And Devin and I spent the last year working on Spring Garden Road in Halifax. It's getting a much more intensive public realm condition, much like what we're proposing for Main Street, just on a slightly larger scale. So one of the key things we are planning to implement, or hoping to implement for this phase of work, is the use of plant material to mitigate stormwater. So in our industry, we call it bioretention, and essentially means that rainwater that falls during a large storm is actually kept on site and doesn't overburden the underground pipe system. So we use planting and soil media to absorb water locally, and again, diminish the impact it has on the underground water system. One of the things we had heard from your internally when we were bidding on the project was that Town of Yarmouth is really interested in utilizing technologies and streetscaping to showcase how progressive a group you are. And so this is, in our humble opinion, one of the best ways to utilize advancements in public realm design to use ecological services to really provide benefit to the city. Here's a little snapshot of what I'm going to walk you through now. We've really grown at quite an interesting concept around this new streetscape phase, knowing we learned a lot in the last work we did, and we wanted to improve upon it. So I'm going to walk you through it now. So we have an overview of the street from our limit of work, starting at Central Street and terminating just past Collins and Lovett. This, after we did the technical design for the street, these were the areas that we were able to identify could support sidewalk extensions, and while still retaining street parking and without causing too many conflicts for traffic movement and traffic flow in the area. So we're going to just zoom into each area and quickly walk up the street. Right here at the beginning of what we're calling the beginning, which is the piece that ties the work we did prior into this new work, the Central Street intersection. We have a sidewalk extension at Alma Square, which relates quite strongly to the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia, as well as it acts as transit amenity, so giving people a place to wait for the bus. I've got labels here, which you have the presentation from before. I won't go through them in great detail, but it just sort of indicates what it is you're looking at from above bird's eye view, because sometimes it can be confusing. So as we move forward down the street, we are seeing these amenity spaces are sort of, there's a rhythm of them as we move down the street. We're taking advantage of every opportunity we can to increase plant diversity in the street, as well as to create spaces for people to linger and spend time. And up here at Collins Street, this intersection hosts the most of these planting areas and seating areas, really creating a great deal of public space amenity. So this is a diagram that explains in a little bit more detail what we mean when we say bioretention. We've done the work to already grade the street and identify, based on the way that water flows in this area of town, what areas will be candidate locations for managing stormwater. How will they be most suited to actually achieving what we hope they will achieve. As I said before, I can just run through it again. The stormwater delay gardens capture and treat the stormwater and reduces the impact on the infrastructure. And we have the opportunity now to tie our project in with a storm and sanitary pipe separation project that's happening along Main Street. So it's a really great opportunity to regrade the whole road and to focus the water where it needs to go. So when we heard about public art as a significant interest from the public engagement that we did, we got quite excited. We really liked the idea of integrating sort of interactive public art in the streetscape. And we have this concept that we want to present, which is based around the lobster car. Lobster cars, as you probably all know, are quite specific to your region and some parts of northern Maine. They're a really unique piece of architecture, and I think a lot of visitors to the area will have encountered these structures without really understanding what they are or what they achieve. We identified that a lot of the people who come to the region travel by the Yarmouth Bar in order to get to Cape Horseshoe, and so that in the off season they often would encounter these lobster cars that would be brought up on shore. And so we thought it was a really exciting opportunity to present something that has quite a regional specificity to it and is really unique to Yarmouth. It also speaks to the heritage of the community, its industrial past and current. And we just really like the form as well. We think it's quite emblematic. So when we break down a public art concept, we take the idea that we're trying to present the community as still being very much intrinsically linked to the fishing industry. We know that tourism is a major player in downtown Yarmouth, and you have a fairly well-established local brand and design for the community. So we wanted to play that up as well. We took the idea of this lobster car and we simplified its form, and then we sliced it up into pieces that can be distributed throughout the sidewalk extensions on Main Street. Here's an example of how we divided it up into 6 pieces, and to create a sort of interactive experience as visitors and locals travel down Main Street. They get to experience both inside and out this lobster car and sort of piece it together in their imagination and the way that they move through it. We also are utilizing this form, this aluminum panel form, to our benefit, given that we have an area of transit amenity that we want to contribute to the street. So a place to wait for the bus. And this is how we imagine that the bus shelter would work. This is a really exciting opportunity to create transit amenity and to give Yarmouth, downtown Yarmouth, something very unique, something very characteristically specific. So the other edition of the public art concept, which ends up being really part of the public space amenity. In phase 2, we installed cedar benches, which you probably all know, they're in bump out areas. For phase 3, we're proposing this idea of kitchen party chairs. So the kitchen party chairs are quite evocative of, again, the historic nature of Yarmouth, your invitational and hospitable nature, your colorful sort of personality, and also the sort of warm and inviting qualities of the region. So we're imagining these are cast aluminum chairs. We like to cast some traditional, maybe Bass River wood chairs and do them in hardware and aluminum, and then we can powder coat them in bright colors that pop on the streetscape that tie themselves back into the town's brand. The idea that beyond just a formal bench, we can really facilitate a lot of different street uses by placing these sort of kitchen-like chairs in the streetscape. So I'd like to move forward with that. And then we're going to also carry forward the reclaimed granite from the streetscape that we had used in phase 2. The idea of the rock in phase 2 is that we're making reference to the geologic formations at Cape Horseshoe. And given our calculations, we think we'll be able to reuse all the curbs that are removed by creating these sidewalk extensions, we'll actually just be able to put that granite back into the streetscape and use it as a feature to help move the water into the bioretention beds. In the planting areas, we've put together a planting palette of hardy, low maintenance grasses and perennials. So everything comes back every year and is inspired by the sort of coastal condition, salt tolerant, very much can handle winter snow load, and adds to the biodiversity of the streetscape. We have to identify two different planting palettes, one for the areas that will be heavily inundated by stormwater, and others for the more drought-like condition that will just be the normal perennial planting areas. And this is how we imagine it all looking in situ. So we have the newly formed sidewalk, concrete sidewalk. These amenity spaces will be in-ground timber decking, making reference to the wharf area, as well as being referential of the lobster carves. This is an example of a bioretention rain garden with granite inlay, reclaimed granite curbs inlay, and the kitchen party chairs. So here's a render of the corner of Jenkins, where we imagine one of the streetscape elements would be. We'd like to illuminate them from inside, creating features on the street at night and really allowing the main street to be used all the time, especially in the busy summer months. Again, so we've bumped out, made the sidewalk quite a bit wider and graded everything. So accessibility is key. So lots of space to move, easy grades for people in wheelchairs to maneuver crossing the street, and creating sort of intimate seating areas by both putting some sort of barrier or sort of enclave that helps people feel comfortable, as well as being surrounded by the planting. And just more views of the same. And get to sort of give you an example of how this could look and feel if we all agree to move forward with the public art concept. And again, at night. So we're able to put LED strip lighting into these features, which really make them quite inviting at night. And that's it for us.